Welcome to The Three. I'm Will Silverstein.
And I'm Alec Giannakopoulos, and this is The Three, where we break down three biggest sports stories in the Chicago area and the country.
Let's get right into it with the Cubs and their major offseason acquisition of Darvish. The Cubs signed Darvish to a 6-year, $126 million contract. And Alec, that's a lot of money. Does he give the Cubs a better chance to win the World Series?
It's a great question. Obviously, it does help them out in the short run. I mean, you have Darvish with, the exception of that disastrous postseason run, is one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I like the contract because when he gets older, it's more front-loaded. So although you're paying a 38-year-old plus $10 million, it could be like an Albert Pujols kind of deal where you're going to be paying him well into his 30s at money you shouldn't be. So it's a short-term fix for sure in terms of the next few years, because their window, although they have a young team, is still about to close. These next 3 or 4 years, though, I like Darvish and the Cubs. I like the deal. How about you, Will?
Yeah, I like the deal. Obviously, as a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, I don't like it maybe as much as you do because I had to experience that postseason. And I think that with Darvish on the team, he definitely does bring a veteran perspective to a roster that definitely could use it, I think. And I think that they needed a little bit of an oomph against the Dodgers. It didn't seem like they had all the firepower they had in that NLCS series. I think Darvish does take them there. I think an extra motivation for Darvish would be, I got to this point, now let me try getting to a further point this time and performing on a higher level now that I'm on the Cubs.
Well, that's what the Cubs do, too, is they always focus on drafting bats, because they believe that a pitcher can lose his strike zone or blow out his arm, whereas a batter usually has a harder time falling off. And so far, it's worked. You win a World Series. But at the same time, you're really now limiting your financial window. I mean, obviously, Bryce Harper's on the horizon. The Cubs want to jump on Bryce. But once you start wrapping up a couple players in these big-time contracts, you got to pay Bryant. You got to pay Rizzo. So the Cubs are slowly forming as a team that we're going to see for the next few years. I don't see any other major acquisitions with exception of Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, by getting all these people here, it's like free agency now is in every sports league, which is that, hey, I can go play with Darvish. I can play with all these guys on the Cubs. I can play with the team that just won 2 years ago. It sounds like a pretty good deal for Darvish.
Absolutely. Well, Will, on to our second question. With the All-Star Game that was held last week in your hometown of Los Angeles, it did not feature any Bulls players. What do Gar Forman and Fred Hoiberg need to do to bring some All-Star players to Chicago?
Honestly, I think they need to do what the Lakers have been doing since Magic Johnson's come in, which is to be able to get high draft picks. And I think that, when you now see, the spectacle that is Lonzo Ball, but also players like Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, it's starting to look like an attractive offseason location for several players for the Lakers, and I think Chris Dunn does bring that to the Bulls. I think that there's a lot of interest to play with him. You have veterans on that team as well, like Robin Lopez. I think the Bulls can be a pretty attractive team in free agency, but ultimately the thing is getting those players to come in.
Well, they had two players in the Rising Stars Challenge, right? You had both Markkanen and Dunn in that game. Granted, there are more people in the studio that watch the Rising Stars Challenge, so not the most premier game to tune into, but they're already starting to do that. The tank is alive and well in Chicago, and we saw that with the trade of Mirotic to the Pelicans. They're trying to move assets, get bad, and get that top 10 pick. I think the Bulls finally have an identity. And that's so important for this team. You look at this team a year ago, the three alphas, right? You had Dwayne Wade, you had Rondo and Jimmy Butler. That was a terrible combination. They all hate each other, and they were, talking to each other on Instagram and throwing shade back and forth. So finally, this team seems to have a multi-year motive, which is good. That motive does mean they're going to be terrible for a couple of years, which of course is bad, but it's important. And I think all they have to do is stay on the course. I like some of these moves. I do like Dunn. I like Markkanen. And at this point now, I believe they would randomly get the 7th, 6th pick. You could really get a talented player at that spot. So just keep tanking. Just keep being bad. And hopefully in a couple years, you get that all-star you need.
Yeah, I think the one question, though, to put that in there is how bad are you going to be and for how long? Because all of a sudden, the Lakers are losing. They still have a losing record this season. They've had losing records under Byron Scott, these last years under Walton. I think the question is, will they ever get out of that? Are these guys experienced enough? Do they have veterans on their team that can help them out? Because the one part that I thought that kind of destroyed the Lakers was losing Lou Williams. I think that he's meant a lot, and you can obviously see what he's done with the Clippers, to have that sort of a veteran on the team that can get you a guaranteed 15, 20 points a game, maybe get you 7 or 8 assists. I think that's what's hurting them, and that could be what doesn't let those guys get out of this hole, which is that, we might be 35-win team for quite a few years. And I think that's going to be an issue for the Lakers going forward, and hopefully the Bulls don't fall in that same pattern.
You never want to pull a Sacramento Kings and have that top 10 pick for like 10 years and hit on maybe Boogie Cousins and that's it. And then you trade them out. You never want to do it. And that's dependent on your draft pick and the front office, which for very good reason the Bulls fans are skeptical for. So, I like where they're going, but the Cameron Payne trade shows a lot that they could still trip up. So who knows, but hopefully keep being bad, find some key players, and slowly turn this team around. That's got to be the Bulls' take.
That's true, I think. And I think the one thing that you have to watch out for is that, those guys might want to leave to more attractive options because sooner or later, maybe Durant doesn't want to play with the Warriors for that long. All of a sudden, Markkanen looks pretty attractive to a Golden State team that's only really a productive big man is a Draymond Green. No hating on Zaza. I love Zaza Pachulia, but he's 7 feet tall. He's getting older in age. I think you can see guys moving around a little bit, and I think that could be something that the Bulls really need to keep an eye on to keep those guys in Chicago.
Well said. Let's go on to our third question.
Yeah, this is a big story that broke in the NBA headlines, was that Mark Cuban's $600,000 fine handed out by the NBA for his comments to Dr. J's podcast where he allegedly told players to tank.
Yeah, Will, and that was a hot debated podcast. He called in the Julius Erving's house call with Dr. J and said, quote, "I'm not probably supposed to say this, but I just had a dinner with a bunch of our guys the other night, and here we are, we weren't competing for the playoffs. I was like, look, losing is our best option," and end quote. Cuban went on to say that this purposeful losing has been going on for a year and a half. And Will, what do you make of these comments from the Shark?
I think this is Mark Cuban being Mark Cuban. We've seen that throughout his career in the NBA. He's different than any other owner. And I think that's both a good thing. It can definitely bring you in. It can definitely bring in a fan base. It's been great. He's won a title. But it can also lead to some detractors, especially that of Adam Silver, where you question the integrity of the game that's being played as if they're tanking, losing on purpose, getting those picks, similar to what I think the Lakers and Bulls had been doing. But look, the NBA is 30 teams. And you see all these players in free agency go to the top few teams in the league, and you're left looking, who do I have? Do I have a guy that maybe is a sixth man on that roster that maybe scores 25 for us, is a good player, but he's not going to take us to the next level? And I think, honestly, what else are you going to do? They've basically been doing this for over a decade and not saying they're doing it. But now it's, I think, brought to the forefront that, hey, we don't have all of our guys. We're going to tank this season.
It's an open secret. Come on. At least 10 teams in the NBA are going to try to be bad on the regular year. And you're right. Silver is trying to break that down. He's trying to get in the way of it. But, you had the process for a good 7 years in Philadelphia. That's just a nice branding way to say, we're going to be terrible. Please deal with that, right? And that's the thing that is NBA-wide. So obviously Silver hates to hear it, but it's been a regular way to build a team up. It's how the Cavs won a championship. It's how the Warriors got as good as they have. It's how the Thunder were able to build up by drafting Durant and drafting Westbrook. It's a almost inexcusable, hard to avoid way to get good. So it's tough because you hear about the NBA all the time. Fans say, I don't watch basketball because it's going to be the Warriors and whoever LeBron is on. And that's a tough truth of the NBA. But at the same time, what are you going to say to Mark Cuban? Mark Cuban has that just overall intimidation factor and kind of charisma that no matter what you say to him, I think he's going to will his team to be as terrible as they are.
Yeah, he's definitely put himself in a position where he is the Jerry Jones of the NBA and both teams in Dallas. He's put himself in a position where, look, I have such a huge media empire. I'm such an influence on the league. What I say matters. I have players respond to what I say, such as the Draymond Green owner comments from last year. He pulls such a weight that you can't get rid of him, but at the same time, you can't let him, I think, put such a huge mark on the NBA. The one thing I would say to Cuban, though, is I actually disagree with him because when he won the NBA championship back in 2011, he won with a team of mostly veteran guys, and he won with a really well-experienced head coach in Rick Carlisle. Carlisle is not known for having, uber-talented guys. Sure, Dirk is great, but, he just hits threes. That's all he does. When you paired that up against, LeBron, Bosh, D-Wade at the time, it seemed like a no-brainer that Miami was going to kill them. I think that speaks a lot to Carlisle. I think that speaks a lot to Nowitzki and the old process that the Mavericks used. That, yeah, we can win with guys that, are maybe more experienced. Maybe they're not the top-tier guys, but guys that came onto the team like Jason Kidd, veterans like that, Jason Terry. So I would question Cuban's thought process behind that, just because I think he still has a really good team. Is Dennis Smith Jr. on that roster?
Right. Well, Cuban has actually been an unorthodox manager in a way, where his team almost never drafts. They usually ship that pick out for something else. They're new to this tanking thing, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like if he's going to tank, he's going to want to announce it. He's going to want to talk to Dr. J and say, we're going to be awful. We're going to win 18 games.
Yeah.
So it's new to him, and that fact, it's almost like they're just shifting gears here. Because I mean, Dirk is, I think in his 40s, if not 39. He's up there.
Yeah, he's very old. I think he built the Berlin Wall and then also tore it down. I think that's how old Dirk Nowitzki is.
Absolutely, yeah. He's walking history, and that whole team itself seems to be dissipating. So they need to rebuild, and what's been working for teams around them has been tanking, right? Yeah. Granted, again, you could be the Kings and just be a perpetual bottom feeder in the NBA due to awful draft picks, and I guess this has turned into the why Alec hates the Kings show.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's important to understand that that's how the way the NBA is. Silver may not like it, but that's the way that the players and owners disputes have led to, and that's the NBA we're currently living in. So whether you say it or you don't, you're still going to tank, and that's what we're seeing in Dallas.
Well, if you're wondering, there's a whole bunch of people in Sacramento that hate the Kings too, so you're not alone on this sort of Kings hating topic.
Sure.
I think the one thing though with tanking, I think it just comes back down to what are your values? Are you putting the old generation of saying we're going to put everything we have into this game, we're going to try our best to win. But when your opponents in your division are, Curry on the Warriors, Durant on the Warriors, Thompson, that huge big three there, and then all of a sudden now the Lakers, you're building a huge empire there. Phoenix has some great guys, Booker's on that team, and who do you have? I think is the question that the Kings have to ask themselves. And then for the Mavericks, same thing. San Antonio is a perpetual powerhouse. Houston's better than they've ever been. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out over the next couple years and definitely the next couple weeks see how public this backlash is with Silver and Cuban. And thanks for joining us this week, and make sure to catch up the rest of our segment lineup on the Daily Iowan YouTube page.
For Will Silverstein, I'm Alec Giannakopoulos for DITV Sports.